Bad news for Donald Trump and one of his big passions. That's reducing the US trade deficit, one of the sexiest of all political topics, but he talks about it a lot. And supposedly he thinks it's a terrible thing that we have this big trade deficit between the US and other countries. Unfortunately, the foreign trade gap in goods and services rose 1.7% from the prior month to a seasonally adjusted $55.5 billion in October, which is obviously that's news for October, but it's also sort of historic news. If you bring up this chart, you're gonna see that trade gap over time. Yeah. Widest point in a decade, actually. The largest deficit since October 2008.
Can we go back to that chart for a second, John? Because I want to draw attention to a couple of things in that chart, okay? So it looks like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that was there a Democrat or a Republican between 2003 and 2008 in charge?
I don't remember. No, yes, obviously it was Republican.
Oh, right, that was George W. Bush, right. And then when it was really low in the chart, here, no, let's keep the chart up. Between 2008 and 2016, when it's much lower, oh, that's right, that's Obama, a Democrat, that's interesting. And now it is spiking again for the guy who claimed that he really cared about trade deficits and he was gonna bring them down. And lo and behold, here we are at the highest point since the last Republican was in charge.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump, as usual, total loser.
And to put it in perspective, it has gone up 11.4% in October when compared with the same period in 2017. So a lot of progress in 1 year. So look, here's the thing. He talks about it a lot. I personally think that it's complex and the trade deficit isn't as uniformly bad as he describes it as. It's a complex combination of a number of different things. If American income goes up, then hypothetically that can lead to a greater trade deficit because when we spend money, if we're not producing the goods here, that means we're gonna spend more money, which goes outside of the country. Actually, wages going down could lead to a smaller trade deficit. So you have to look into the specifics. The problem for him though, is that while the trade deficit sort of goes up and down dependent on a lot of different factors, when it comes to him, there's actually good reason to believe that he has been having an influence on it, just not in the direction that he says. And it has to do with his alter ego, Tariff Man. So he is Tariff Man, he declared that. He sort of ripped the mask off on Twitter and says that he's going to use these tariffs to make money. The issue is that he doesn't actually seem to understand how tariffs work at all. He seems to think that the other countries pay them, which is not actually how it works. I pay them and you pay them. It's a tax on consumption for the country that the goods are coming into. Now, hypothetically, you could want that and you could say that long-term, fine, we're gonna pay a little bit more in the short term, but it'll change consumer habits. And so in the long term, it'll benefit our country. Okay, that's fine. But right now, the money that he is like congratulating himself for raising is not Chinese money, that's our money. That's money that we spent. And I'm not sure that he actually gets that.
No, I am sure he definitely does not get it. He has been saying since the campaign, the Chinese are taking this money from us. It's just not how it works. It's not remotely how it works. And so it is a tariff that we Americans pay. So how would the Chinese be taking it from us? So, but like his argument though was, well, okay, we're gonna get it back from the Chinese, which is not factual, doesn't make any sense at all, right? But at least the trade deficit is gonna go down. But now the trade deficit has gone up. So in Trump's logic, well then China's taking more from us.
Yeah.
Right?
And what would it even mean if he says, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna make them make the trade deficit smaller? What does that mean? The trade deficit is just a combination of a couple of numbers. The amount we buy from overseas that comes into our country and the amount that other countries buy of our products that then go overseas. What is the Chinese government gonna do? They're gonna go banging on all the doors around China saying, hey, you better shop on Amazon more. What would that be in practice? Okay, look, they could change tariff policy, that might change things. These are second and tertiary effects, but they can't directly change it. It's not the Chinese government that's buying all these products, it's random people. If we wanna make a smaller trade deficit with China or with any set of countries, we need to produce more things that they wanna buy. That is the only answer, that is the only answer that there has ever been.
Okay, and finally, I am actually going to be super duper fair to Donald Trump because I'm merciful. And the reality is there's a little bit of a twist here that if the economy is doing well, people will buy more things in America because they'll have slightly more disposable income. But when they buy things, they are buying a lot of imports because a lot of our economy is driven by imports. So that's why this is a complicated issue. And so if you were an intelligent president and understood those economic principles, you would be thinking to yourself, this is a tricky calculus. I probably shouldn't promise a lower trade deficit and a better economy at the same time, because if I have a better economy, I'll probably have a higher trade deficit, right? Now, the idea that Trump would even understand that concept is obviously laughable, okay? So he's like, no, me have good economy and low trade deficit at the same time. No, you don't. That's not how it works. So I'm being fair to him in that, saying that, yeah, the economy up until now it's crashing, but at least the stock market is, had been on the continuing the upswing of Obama, but he hadn't killed it yet. And so people were buying more. That led to the higher trade deficit. But he's just too thick to understand that concept. If he did, he could actually take credit for some of it, just not the parts he's talking about.
Yeah, so you were fair. I want to take away a little bit of that credit now, because as I said, there are some times when you can point to a particular act that the president does have control over that can lead to this sort of thing, and we do have that act. And it does have to do with his alter ego as Tariff Man. So October's exports drop partly reflects the continued drop back in soybean shipments to China following the imposition of tariffs. But there's also been a more general collapse in overall goods exports to China, which have now fallen by 30% over the past 12 years, which for one country, a fairly large trading partner of ours, to happen in 1 year is certainly significant. And to give you an idea of the amount of money that we're talking about, soybean exports decreased by $800 million in October and are down more than 40% from last year as China countered Trump's tariffs with hefty taxes on US agricultural products. So to the extent that he can directly influence this, he has. He set up tariffs. They in turn did exactly what we said they were going to do. They set up their own tariffs against soybeans. They're buying less soybeans, taking close to $1 billion. Now our overall trade deficit is like $55 billion, so that's not a gigantic percentage of it, but he could have taken away the 1.7% that it went up in October. That's pretty close to the soybean effect, actually. And that is directly attributable to Donald Trump's action.
So last thing on this is that, look, presidents take too much credit when things are going well. They take too much blame when the economy is not doing well. It's more complicated than that. And you have to have a bigger picture look. So if you look at the 8 years under Obama or Bush, well, that actually is a fair assessment, as we were doing a little bit earlier, right? But if you're looking at any one time, they're not directly responsible for all the economy or all the trade deficit. But John makes a great point here. To the degree that Donald Trump has affected it, you could say, hey, you know what? He's got a good economy. That Obama had a good economy. That's why the trade deficit, well, that's why a lot of things, including the stock market, were doing well, and unemployment was low. And Trump continued that, and hence the trade deficit under Trump. Not hence, but partly why the trade deficit went up. But exports clearly went down because of a direct action that Donald Trump took.
Yeah.
So, and that was the Tariff Man, right? And so Tariff Man clearly made the trade deficit in that instance worse, not better. It is as directly attributable to the president as any action can be. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.